Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to call back this up. I'm going to call the meeting to order. No one has signed up for public comment, so we'll move right on to item number 3, work session item. The following items will be considered, discussed, and take appropriate action. A, report and discuss the City of Fredericksburg proposed 5-year capital improvement plan, CIP. With that, Clinton, we're going to turn it over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor, City Council. This is the first of 2 presentations for the capital improvements plan. Tonight we'll be discussing the general fund capital improvement plan. Then following up on the 19th with discussion of the enterprise fund CIP. This actually fits in very nicely with our workshop coming up next week to discuss the general fund budget. So as we go through these projects, they'll look very familiar when we sit down and talk about that general fund budget. So for the benefit of the public, I think we have Tom, Mo, and it looks like Mr. Studer left. So this is a routine process that we go through every year, CIP process ahead of the regular budget process. This is a way for city staff and departments to identify those capital needs, whether it's projects or equipment, personnel, in some cases programs, software, things like that, to brief the council and kind of start that wish list. Some of these items are wish list items. Others have come from the various master plans the city has completed. Public Works, for instance, we have a water, wastewater, reclaimed water master plan, transportation master plan, and other master plans, drainage master plan. And out of those plans, we have projects that have been plugged into the CIP at some point. So again, this is discussed ahead of the budget process. And we do have a set of objectives that we utilize to develop these CIP projects. I'm going to go over those just very quickly. The first is to preserve and improve infrastructure of Fredericksburg. So a good example of the preservation of infrastructure is the water bond projects that are underway currently. About $20 million worth of projects that we're building, again, to preserve that system and expand on that water distribution system that we currently have. The second is to identify and examine current and future infrastructure needs and minimize that financial impact on the residents. The third is to maximize the useful life of capital improvements by scheduling major renovations and modifications at the appropriate time. So a good example of those last 2 is Friendship Lane. Friendship Lane was beginning to fail. We had the opportunity to do a relatively minor, just mill and overlay project on Friendship Lane. That project, if it would have been delayed about 5 years, would have cost about 4 or 5 times more than what it cost. And we're talking about general fund dollars. It's very important that we identify those needs and address them quickly. And then finally, to improve financial planning by balancing those needs with the resources. So as we go through these projects, we'd like to be able to do all these next year, but unfortunately we don't have the financial resources to do all of those. So it is a starting point in the prioritization of all of the projects for consideration in the budget process. So with that, do we have our presentation up? There we go. Next slide, please. So again, as I mentioned, by definition, the CIP does include capital projects, equipment. There is some software in here, programs, employees, and so forth. We're going to concentrate on the first year of a 20-year capital improvement plan. Will provide quite a bit of detail on these projects and such that will be considered in next year's budget. may provide just a little bit of detail on the 5-year outlook. You should have gotten a copy of the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet includes all of the CIP projects over the next 20 years. The reason we gave this to the council, if you see a project that you see might need to be moved up in priority order, next week will be the starting point of that discussion to start talking about those projects. So the fiscal requirements over the next 20 years, and again, this is all the projects in that spreadsheet. It's about $311 million worth of projects. And you can see the breakdown is 63%, 37% general fund to enterprise fund projects. Okay, next slide. There you go. Okay, so we have about an hour and a half to move through this presentation like we do every year. I'm going to have each department director, or in the case of Public Works, I'll have Chris and Garrett presenting on the Public Works information. But as we're moving through this, feel free to stop us and ask questions. If you want to wait till the end and just jot down your questions, we'll hopefully have a little bit of time at the end to have a little bit of discussion as well. So with that, we're kicking off with administration, and I will hand it over to Kent. Next slide, please.
Okay, Mayor and Council, we actually have 3 projects in administration that we want to discuss with you and present to you this evening. You'll see we only have 2 pages, and so I'll try to clarify the second page in your packet. But these are all projects we've been talking about for the last 4 or 5 years. Here is previously we've identified to the council the need for additional office space for city offices. We've identified the need for a new police station at some point in the next 5 years. And then we also will need a 3rd fire station. I think we've recently provided council some preliminary information on that. And Chief Fiscal is here tonight. He can kind of give you an update on that project. But let me just start with the next slide. We could. And what we're talking about is very preliminary information on planning for new city offices. And as you can imagine, we are getting as you know, we're getting very crowded at City Hall. We're having to double up some of the office space. For example, we're adding a new building clerk position. We're going to have to double up, put her in an office with other employees. The code enforcement officers will have to start sharing offices. And so we're starting to have a real space crunch at City Hall. In addition to that, I want to remind the City Council in the next couple of years, the offices where the Parks Administration and Health Department will be taken over with an expansion of market plots. It's phase 3 of the market plots redevelopment plan includes additional space for the market plots, and so those offices will have to relocate somewhere else. And so in order to plan ahead for that, we need to start looking at some possibilities for additional office space. I know the council has discussed the middle school. We've toured the middle school. We've also had some very initial discussions regarding the county building at San Antonio Street and Adams Street. We also have a couple of privately owned buildings around City Hall that have been appear to be available for possible purchase by the city. So all these things need to be discussed during the coming year, and let's develop a plan on how we're going to address the need for additional offices. So the number that you have here, the $40,000, is just to retain an architectural firm to be used on an as-needed basis as we evaluate these buildings, determine how they will satisfy our space needs, how much it will cost to renovate these buildings. And again, the council will be actively involved in every step in the process. But we just feel like we need to bring an architect, a professional on board to assist us in evaluating the different options for city offices for the future. It'd be very difficult to propose a bond issue for a brand new city hall, so we're not talking about it at this point in time. But I think there are some possibilities around the current downtown area to acquire or lease some buildings that we can convert to some city offices. So that's what this first project is about. Okay, so moving on, the next slide is, again, a project we've been talking about for at least the last 5 years, and that is the need for a new police station. And we have acquired property on Friendship Lane that we have identified as a logical location for the police station. They would be able to share space, a parking space with the consolidated warehouse, and it would be a very centralized location for a new police station. And we've had some discussions with the architect that had previously worked with us on this, Robert Garza, and he has started to gather some information on the space needs for the police department. That would also include a police training room. It would include a municipal courtroom and other facilities that the police station needs. And so the idea is here to bring an architect firm on board next year to assist us with preliminary plans for a new police station and cost estimates for a police station, and the hope that we could take a bond issue to the public in the next couple of years to design and build a new police station for our police department. So Chief Wetz was not able to attend the meeting tonight, but Brian Vorhauer is here, and he's been actively involved in this project. And last but not least, we don't have it on the sheet here, but we will, I think the council is aware, over the next 5 years, we will need to construct a third fire station in the eastern area of the county. Our fire calls, our EMS calls has increased dramatically in these areas, and we've started some preliminary looks at a location for the fire station, again, in proximity to 290 East, outside the city limits, but within a mile of our city limits. And so, again, Chief Bizzle and his staff have been working on that project, if you have any questions on that. So we may be coming to council in the coming year for a request to purchase land for a third fire station. And so once we get the cost identified on what that would involve and location information, we'll be bringing that to you for your consideration. So those are the 3 projects that administration has identified. And again, we have departments here representing all 3 of those projects in case you have any questions. So that's the report on the administration department. Do we want to stop and ask questions on each department, Clinton, or we want to go through the whole thing?
I think it might be easier if we do. Just ask as we go.
Okay.
Is the fire station a shared expense between the city of Fredericksburg and Gillespie County? Gillespie County.
It would be, the cost would be shared 50-50, yes, sir.
50-50.
Yeah. So this would be something we would need to discuss when we have the meeting with the county commissioners, city council county commissioners. We would need to talk. And hadn't had a chance to catch up with Chief Bizzle this week. Do you have an update on location or anything else on that project, Chief Bizzle?
If we evaluate all of our responses, the area that we see increasing calls are obviously the area that we're having a growth, which is to the east and the northeast and the east area. That seems to be the call volume seems to be increasing out there more so than any of our areas. And then if we evaluate where our current stations are, we have the coverage that we seem like that we need in the areas that we have existing stations. So when you start to look at the growth and the growth patterns of our community, it seems to be moving in that direction. And that's the direction that we're focusing on.
Is that out? Is that East 290 you're speaking of?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So can we build out as far, I mean, it needs to be in the ETJ, so it's out as far as Schmidzinski Lane?
It needs to be on the side of the river. I believe that's the preliminary indication, right?
And we're evaluating, we continue to evaluate that. And all of it hinges on, we have a presentation that we'll be presenting to you that shows our operations over the last 4 years, which kind of gives you an indication of all of our currently in the direction that we're moving and in the areas that we need to focus on as we move into the future. So Saminsky Lane would be good. There may be some other places that potentially would work as well. We kind of have to evaluate the number of calls in specific areas in order to place the station in this strategic location.
Chief, I think my comment was, I guess the ETJ just goes out as far as Schmidzinski, so that's as far, excuse me, that's as far out as we could go. Correct, or could we actually build in the county?
I believe so, yes, sir.
We can.
I'm not aware of any restriction that requires, city can own property outside of the city and the ETJ.
Okay.
We've got well sites, for example, we own in the county.
Can we check with some of these wineries and these other places that are creating a lot of this problem and ask them to chip in and purchase property or donate some property? And yeah, let's do that. Yeah, let's do it.
I guess the question I have, Chief, when you have this new facility, will we have the equipment to man it?
That will have to be included in the cost of building the station. In my previous life, what we did is we built the station and actually purchased the equipment for this station in one package.
Okay. Very good, thank you.
Did these figures represent that? Did those figures represent that? Chief, do the figures that we have in here represent the equipment costs also?
Actually, the building of the station does not, I need to add that. I did not get that into, and I believe the bill out showed it in 2025. For the actual build out of the station, actually purchase land in year, or next year, and then actually do the station, skip a year and do the station.
I'm sure our brethren would like to know how much money the whole thing is going to cost.
Well, you can figure, you could probably have another
Equipment?
Again, we currently have the ambulance, as long as we continue on our replacement plan for our ambulances, we would have the ambulances to go.
Thank you.
Can I mention one other thing on the police station that Chief Wetz and I have been talking about? When we design that police station, again, we'll have a large room in there that will serve as a police training room and the municipal court, but the thought is we could also use that for city council chambers. So it would be a multi-purpose facility in that.
Then we look at like a manufactured type building there, office or modular, I think. Modular.
We'd look at all,
All concepts, yeah.
Any other further questions?
We're looking
on
at
that?
Lucille Rock's property there, is that what it is?
actually, it's a property adjacent. There's some property
On the
between
other side
Lucille
of the
Rock and the
drainage.
Consolidated Warehouse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Any other questions? If not, we'll move on. Thank you, Kent.
Okay, we'll move on to fire EMS and emergency management, and I'll ask Lynn and Justin to come up.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. What we'd like to do this evening is kind of propose an outlook moving forward over 5 years. That includes we currently have an aging fleet of apparatus in our department. Newest being the one that you all approved last year, and then a new ambulance last year as well. Other than that, when we look into our fleet, it's getting much older. It's getting up to 20 years old. Once they reach that age, we start to have a few more maintenance issues and things of that nature for the equipment that we currently have. So as we move out over the next 5 years, what we have listed here as a proposal would be to add a new pumper tender this year. That truck would actually replace a current tender that we operate out of. There's a 1994 model with the tank rusting out on it. And then our engine 2, which is about 20 years old. So again, with that particular purchase coming in 2021, would replace 2 pieces of equipment, and actually we'll be able to operate that for both operations, whether we're in the county delivering water or whether we're in the city hooking up to a fire hydrant. So, and then as we move out across the next 5 years, it shows, well, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Justin because he has a presentation on the generators that we have.
Would any of this equipment that we would be replacing, could that be used in this substation out here on 290 East, or are you comfortable with it? Are you not comfortable with it? Or
You mean the equipment that is on the truck?
well, the truck itself, if we're going to, I don't know, what is the pumper and the tender then?
Well, if you look at an actual replacement plan in apparatus, you can generally figure that in 15 years that a truck is getting to the point that you need to start considering replacing it. And then once it reaches a 20-year mark, then you're at a point that you've got to really have serious considerations of replacing it. So if we're building a station out in 24, 25, this truck would then be 25 years old. So, you know, I mean, it's we would still have an old truck that's going into a new station. So.
Okay.
And then let me rephrase. I'll go to Justin last. But so and then also in 2021, we were proposing to replace an ambulance. If we look at all of our ambulances, they are right at, except for the one that we purchased last year, it has about 45,000 miles on it. But the rest of the other 4 ambulances that we have are at 100,000 and above miles on those pieces of equipment. So we'd be proposing actually adding an ambulance next year at a cost of about $325,000. And so that's going to be in the 21-22 proposal. And then I'll turn it over to Justin. He can talk about the generators. We had some issues during the winter storm related to generators and having power. And, you know, as many of you know, some people were out of power for 21 days. And so, you know, we found some issues that we feel like we need to be corrected moving forward from an emergency operations center standpoint. So I'll turn it over to Justin.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The first one proposed is a replacement generator for City Hall and Central Fire Station. The cost on that is estimated at $80,000. The current generator is undersized, and the new proposed generator would run all of City Hall, including the HVAC system and the IT equipment that is there. And then the second generator project is for 2 tower sites. The fire and EMS runs off 3 tower sites. One of those sites is owned by the county, and it has a backup generator on it. The 2 that we're proposing, they're ran off battery backup, which only lasts 24 to 36 hours. And during the ice storm, obviously we were without power longer than that, so we lost those 2 towers. So these generators would keep those towers up and going if we were to experience a power outage over 24 to 36 hours.
So does the $36,000 cover the cost of both generators?
Yes, sir. This is the put generators on both sites.
Okay, thank you.
Didn't we just replace the generator at City Hall about 2 years ago, maybe?
Yes, we did.
Yes.
It's
Is
undersized.
this the one we got?
It's undersized.
Surely has some resale value, I'm sure.
It will have some resale value.
Okay.
For sure.
One thing I wanted to add, as far as the generators at the radio towers, that will be a shared city-county cost because that's emergency management, so we'll ask the county to pick up half the cost for the generators at the radio towers. In terms of the City Hall fire station, since half the generator will serve the fire station, we're going to ask the county to pick up 1/4 of that generator, cost of the generator, since it'll serve the fire station, half of it will serve the fire station, so they'll be sharing in a half of the cost of that generator. No, sir, those generators are only related to the water system, according to the language, and you'll hear about that a little bit later this evening. Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Here's none.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Moving on. Mr. Bailey, you're back.
Okay, next we'll just talk briefly about information technology.
Mayor, Council, thank you for your time this evening. We have several of our components, our larger components, which consist of our data center that has all of our servers. That's a large ticket item there. And then we also have our, it's a component that stores all of the data. Okay, sorry about that, Jerry. This stores all of our data, and over the past several years, we've increased our data. With just the amount of calls from EMS, police department, and then the amount of storage that we store from our video, and we've added more video, quite a bit more video from the police department. Those, we usually like to replace, those two different components we usually like to replace every 5 years. The servers were on that schedule. We replaced those here recently, about 1.5 years ago. And then our SAN component, which houses all of our data, we have extended that out to 2023. I think we spent about $75,000 6 years ago, 5.5, 6 years ago. And because of the amount of data, and it is growing exponentially, we are gearing to spend a little more. So that's when we're looking at around 90 to 100,000. And then I believe it is 2 years later, we are going to need to spend about 150,000. I believe that's 2024. We're going to spend about 150,000 for the police department's video system. That is also going to be approaching about the 6.5 to 7 years on that as well. And then the 121,000 on the 2025 will be replacing the servers at that point. So, if you guys have any questions on that.
Thank you. Here.
Okay, moving on to police department projects.
Mr. Fuller.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Here on behalf of the police department, speak about our 5-year outlook breakdown, totaling approximately $3.2 million over the next 5 years for the allocations. We'll be looking at additional manpower positions to include evidence technician, school resource officer, and additional police officers, records management, fleet replacements, equipment, and weapons and ammunition are all our big ticket items. Next slide, please. One more. So new personnel, cost estimates for next fiscal year, 2021-22 will be the addition of the SRO, school resource officer, and evidence technicians positions. And we're looking at 124 to 148 for those two positions for next fiscal year. And then projecting one additional position, police officer position, for the remaining years of 23 to 24, 25, 26. The total 5-year cost on those positions is $497,000. We will continue to go to ACOG and apply for police officer position grants. If we're granted a position or two or one every year, if we're lucky enough to get one of those positions, then those numbers will come down, and they'll come down across the board in the 5-year projection because we won't need a, total payroll for that employee. But we will still incur the cost of, a police vehicle or equipment, just not payroll for that individual. Next slide, please.
Brian, how many officers are you short now? How many positions open?
We have 5 cadets graduating from the academy this evening, and they will start their training tomorrow. And we currently have 1 position open, and 1 officer, his last day is today. So after today, we'll have 2 positions open. Okay. So we're currently, until these 5 move through the field training process and are on their own, it's probably going to be about 6 months. So we're still about 5 positions short on patrol. We have hired for all of them. It's just getting those individuals trained and out on the street. But 1 position open now, and after today, 2 positions open that we're taking applications. And Lieutenant Raymer and Sergeant Seelig are actually testing a couple applicants later this week. So actively looking.
Right. And thank you.
Records management, we'll continue to pay our Odyssey fees. That is the records management system that we've been using for the last 20 years. We will slowly be phasing out Odyssey and reducing the $60,000 per year that we use for that system as they integrate with our new system, which is the New World program. When we start phasing out the Odyssey users, we pay per user for Odyssey. So as Odyssey starts phasing out, we won't have that many users. That cost will come down. But the projected is $430,000 over the next 5 years for the records management system. So fleet vehicle replacement, we're currently on a replacement of 7 vehicles per year with an estimated cost of $258,680. That will continue from the 2022 to 26 budget. We replace our vehicles every 5 to 6 years, close to 65,000 miles. If we get any longer than that in duration of years or miles, we start paying a lot in cost to fix stuff that breaks on those vehicles. And when we resell those vehicles at that year range and that mileage, we get top dollar for them. And if we wait a year or 2 longer, it dramatically decreases to where we're only getting a couple thousand to several $1,000s for them instead of, $14,000 to $16,000. We did contact the enterprise fleet manager that currently works for the city. We had him put together several different charts on phasing in fleet vehicles for the police department, what the monthly cost was, how many vehicles we have. And each time we came back with it was just more cost effective to purchase them and resell them. So.
Is that because of the mileage?
It's some because of the mileage, and we're just able to get more money for them if we sell them, through auction or through gov deals than what they were offering. And then the emergency management or police package vehicles through the rental company are a little higher in cost because of the liability that they're incurring because they are a pursuit rated police package vehicle. So the cost is a little higher per vehicle than if you just went and got an administration Tahoe. So the cost is higher per month.
Thank you.
All right, the video and e-ticketing maintenance system. Eric kind of alluded to some of these costs. The typical lifespan of a camera. We have vehicle cameras and we have body cameras. We are having some of them start to fail because we've had them for approximately 5 years. We replaced a handful of them this last year, but we're finding that we're going to have to get them on some sort of schedule to make sure that those cameras in the cars and the body cameras that they wear on their person stay up to date and stay working. So we're going to start a replacement period for the body cameras at $16,000 a year, and the e-ticketing software and equipment is estimated about $25,000 a year. Inside the $341,000 over 5 years will also be some video equipment purchase for that 3 to 5 year lifespan on the car cameras themselves. That is correct, yes.
How many cameras, body cameras do you get for $16,000? Roughly?
Eric, do you recall offhand? They're $950 each. Is that right, Eric?
16? Do officers share them, or does each officer have his own?
Each officer has their own. That body camera syncs with the camera in the patrol car, and then it links the video from the patrol car and the body camera together in a package for the attorneys. So we get to the new officer equipment. As I mentioned earlier, every officer that we bring on, or new position that we bring on, it costs about $72,000 to equip that officer. That's the vehicle, all the equipment that goes in the vehicle, and then all the equipment on the person themselves. So if we're going to be adding positions, one next year for the school resource officer, and then one additional officer for the next several years, that would get us to not only an additional school resource officer to make 3 school resource officers, 1 for high school, middle school, and then elementary. That would also get us to 5 officers per shift. And we're currently at 4. And we would like to get to that 5 officer per shift, just because of the demand of the calls we're seeing and the increase in calls. So for equipping officers out from 2022 to 26, 1 officer per year, about $72,000, it's $359,000 total.
So I have a question for Kent. With the additional SRO officer for the FISD, what did the school board include in their budget?
Included half the salary and benefits for that position. I don't have the amount.
Okay, but did it also include the half of the equipment?
Don't believe so. No. Something we need to consider. No.
I don't believe it did.
Okay.
I can definitely check for you.
So
That's probably something we're going to have to negotiate. Go back to the
we
school.
need to
Yeah.
talk to the school board. I mean, unless we want to send an officer to the elementary school with nothing but lollipops.
That is, if we do equip them with a new car, we could always, I guess, for a year or so, give them a used car and patrol gets the new cars, and so we can probably get by for 1 year without buying a new car. But you're right, the actual cost for that, if we're going to share it, we need to share all costs.
Yeah. So that's the issue here. If it's a benefit to the school district, which I think it's a benefit to our community, then let's make sure that we have an accurate understanding of what the costs are to that benefit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good point.
And that brings us to my last slide on weapons and ammunition. We have an average cost or an estimated cost of $54,000 a year from 2022 to 26. This includes the estimate for weapons replacement and training ammunition or qualification ammunition. And we're trained and qualified 3 times a year on all weapon systems. And we're on a 6-year rotation replacement for our firearms. The 5-year total is $302,000, and that is also taking into account the inflation ammunition has seen over the past couple of years. It's doubled and sometimes tripled in the cost of the ammunition.
Can you tell us what less lethal ammunition is?
Less lethal ammunition is any ammunition that's not lethal. We have bing bag, 12 gauge bing bag rounds, rubber bullets, and other devices like that. Less lethal, it could be taser, or it could be gas or smoke or something like that.
Thank you.
The weapon that the officer has, that does not belong to them then, is that correct?
That's correct.
Do they have an option to provide their own weapon?
They do not, with the exception of a backup weapon. But the rifle, shotgun, and pistol is all issued by the police department, owned by the city. And they have an option to qualify with a backup weapon that they provide. That's their own personal weapon.
What happens to the weapons after their service is deemed over? Do y'all wholesale them out, or do they go to an auction, or what happens to them?
No, the firearms for the past several years, because of our turnover, the firearm is turned back in to the police department, and we reissue it to the next officer.
Oh, I see, so it's, okay.
The only cases where the department actually gifts the sidearm, only the handgun, to the individuals that they retire
Okay.
from the police department in the city.
So they're reused?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And that's the end of my presentation, barring any questions. Council, Mayor? Thank you.
Being done, thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Moving on. Good afternoon, Andrea.
Parks and Recreation, Andrea.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Andrew Schmidt, Parks Department. So this afternoon, we're just going to discuss mainly 10 projects that are coming up in this next year's requests. Most of them are maintenance projects, but some of them aren't. In the next 5 years, we have about $8 million in projects, and over 20, we have $15 million in projects, and this is for 55 projects. So we'll start with the restrooms out at Ladybird Park. We've been trying to replace 2 of them for the last several years. We currently, just at the mid-year budget, 1 was approved. So we've ordered it. It should hopefully be installed by the end of September or the beginning of October. We still have the other one that still needs to be replaced. This is in the RV park, located over closest to the swimming pool in the Pioneer Garden. So it's in the same or worse condition than the one we're replacing right now. The next project is probably one of our top priorities, and it's something we've been discussing, but it is a very big ticket item, and that's the paver replacement out at Market Square. They've been in pretty poor condition the last several years and getting worse, but the ice storm in February really sped things up, and they're in pretty serious condition right now. So you're looking at about $500,000 to replace all of the pavers on the square. And this would be to convert them to concrete pavers that are the exact same as the ones we have on Austin Street currently. We would bid this project out, but we did get a preliminary estimate, and this number should cover the replacement of everything on the square. We do have the option to do this in phases if we wanted to try to do that. Maybe 2 phases, do half the square in 1 year and then half the square in the next year, if we don't have funding to do all of it at the same time.
Andrea, what happens to the pavers that have names or?
So in the History Garden, we're not going to mess with those because those are concrete pavers, so they're good to go. So anybody that has a name on a paver that's in the History Garden, they're fine. We won't remove them. Now, there are pavers on the rest of the square that do have names on them. Not a lot, but we do have quite a few. A lot of them we can't even read. They've broken into pieces. The tops have broken off. But if we find some that we can read, what we were thinking is we would take them and store them over at the warehouse somewhere, put an ad in the paper, let the public know if you had a paver on the square that had a name on it, and we'll have to log names as we pull them out. It'll be a little bit of a tedious project, but let them come and get their paver back.
You couldn't replace them on where the other pavers are?
If they wanted to purchase an additional paver in the History Garden, they could do that as well.
Okay.
But we're not going to replace everybody out there. We don't have all that information.
Okay.
They can do that for $175, huh?
Is that the cost now? I'm not sure what they're... Yes. Shelley gets to handle those. We just put them in.
Andrea, do you have any
private contributions to this effort? Not currently, no. I know Miss Jerry's been working on trying to get some, but mainly.
We're working on it. See what we can come up with.
So they're fundraising right now, trying to get the funds for the phase 2 of the Market Square redevelopment project for that corner building, the bathrooms, and then also pavers, but we don't have anything towards the pavers yet.
Okay, thanks.
Are the new pavers with names on them, are they also concrete?
Yes, they are.
Okay, thank
And they're for the lifetime of the paper.
you. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so then our next project is also related to this one, and that's replacing some of the limestone on the square. In addition to the pavers, we have several sections that are limestone. This also has significant damage. About a third of the square is in pretty bad shape. It's a significant trip hazard. Crawfish Festival about 3 years ago, we had a band member trip and fall back behind Adels Brine. So we've had other trips and falls. Nothing serious up to this point, but we don't want it to get that way. So for the $50,000, we could replace about a third of the limestone in the square. That would be the worst areas only, which would get most of the bad stuff. Some of the limestone is still in pretty good shape, but some of it's in very poor shape.
Mayor, one thing, the problem with limestone is because it's a sedimentary rock, water gets in and it flakes. Have we thought about, I don't see the problem with the limestone ever ending.
Right.
Because of the nature of limestone. Have we given any consideration to replacing the limestone pavers with something like slate?
So we did talk to that about that. I have kind of looked into that. If we did the slate, it's going to look a lot different than the limestone. So it would have to be kind of phased in over time, or we'd have to look at a different cost. And then we also were discussing that because limestone has a little give to it, if somebody drops something, it might just chip a section. But if you drop something heavy on slate, it might shatter it or put a big crack in it. So we would want to talk to Market Square Redevelopment to see, would they want to switch everything over from limestone to slate, or do we just want to stick with the limestone? I don't know how long the current limestone's been there, but I don't know if y'all know that answer, but if we have about a third of it that's in bad condition and it's been there 25 years or, 10 years, I'm not sure how long it's actually been there, if it's worth just going back with the limestone again rather than redoing everything on the square.
I've got both slate and limestone at my house, and the limestone is layering, and the slate, nothing's happened to it at all.
Well, we can look into that a little bit more, talk to Market Square Redevelopment and see if they'd be interested in switching it over.
In front of my house, on Friendship Speedway.
Okay, the next project, these are the heater replacements out at the Pioneer Pavilion. These heaters have been there for more than 40 years at least. They are definitely have become a safety issue. The pilot light's going out on a regular basis. Staff is having to light them at least 15 times each winter. The burner component is not burning completely. There's a draft that's blowing out the pilot, so we really need new heaters. So we're looking at about $9,500 to replace the heaters out there.
I would like to y'all to look into doing like what they did in the Cardinal Room up there, where they have the tubes going down there. And if you're gonna spend $9,500, find out what it would be to get some heat pumps in that. And then you'll have air conditioning and heating in there, and just put those tubes down there.
Well, we did look into air conditioning.
Did you?
We've looked into it several times, actually. I've done it, I think, twice since I've been here, but the price tag comes in very high. The last time we looked at it, I believe there were some building codes that were changing, and so we were going to have the entire building engineered to add that type of air conditioning and heating. And they said the number of units, heating AC units that would have to go on this roof, the building may not even be able to hold them. So we found, and Caitlin's here, she handles the reservations out at Pioneer, that really not having air conditioning, we don't normally rent it in the summer, but it's actually kind of a unique facility and people tend to like it, and we wouldn't recommend adding air conditioning at this point. Just the heating in the winter months. And we can do that for $9,500. I think the initial cost without the engineering done was over $100,000 for the air conditioning. The next project is one that the Tennis Association approached me about, and they're willing to contribute half the cost, so we kind of look more favorably on groups that want things done when they're willing to contribute, and that is to replace the lights out at the tennis courts at Ladybird Park. They're willing to spend up to $20,000 for all of the hardware, and they're asking the city if we would match that and spend $20,000 and do the installation and removal. So these new lights would be dark skies compliant, they'd be more energy efficient, LED lights, and they would solve some of the issues with lighting out there, dark spots for tournaments and that kind of thing. We've had a huge explosion with the use on the tennis courts right now, between tennis, the schools, the private schools, and now pickleball. So we don't have close to enough tennis or pickleball courts right now. And it's becoming a struggle to try to fit everybody in the schedule. But this would be something that would help make it a little more user-friendly in the evenings.
What would be the cost of a new tennis court?
I don't have that number. Those courts out there, we've got some pretty significant issues on court 2 with some cracking, and we've done some looking into it, and we've basically been told you need to bulldoze that and start from scratch. The problem is it's connected to the other courts, so I don't know if we can just bulldoze part of the courts. We're grandfathered in right now, is my understanding. You have to have a certain footage for runoff, and right now our courts are grandfathered in, but if we go in there and start doing work, I don't know if the tournaments will still be able to be held there. So that there's lots of questions for that. I know back when the sports park was in discussion, the school district had mentioned they might be willing to have courts built. They would provide the land if the city funded new courts over on their property, but I don't know what the cost is.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing to keep in mind is pickleball is taking over for a lot of former tennis players are switching to pickleball, and it's becoming more and more popular. And I think it may eventually be more popular than tennis.
You know, we've got, both programs are huge right now, and I don't have to deal with it every day, but Caitlin does, and she's trying to make everybody happy, but there's too many users and not enough courts right now.
We've sure come a long way from asphalt tennis courts, haven't we?
Then the next project is to replace the windows out at park headquarters. So right now, all of the windows are rotting. They are not energy efficient. They're single pane windows. From the rain today, we've got wetness around the windowsills. So for $7,500, we can replace those with 30-year vinyl windows that are energy efficient, tinted, and double paned. The next project is a automatic gate for the RV park. What we're finding is we've got a lot of people coming into the RV park after hours that haven't paid to get in. We've had some people sleeping in the bathrooms. We have had an increase in vandalism over the last 18 months. So if we were to add this gate, it would be something similar to what you see at state parks right now. So during the day, it would be open, but then after hours, 10 o'clock till 6 in the morning or 7 a.m., we would close and lock the gate, and they would have a code, people that had paid to get in so that they can get out if there was an emergency. It would work the same way as the Texas Parks and Wildlife. A lot of those, if you've ever camped overnight, that's what they have in most of their parks. Some of this we would do in-house as well.
Well, obviously this will help with the vehicular traffic, but people walking, it's not going to stop the people sleeping in the bathrooms or wherever they sleep.
Yeah, well, we have people that'll drive in, they'll park their car, and then they'll walk in the bathroom. So they'll have to park the car a little farther away. And I think it'll be more obvious to like the police department or park hosts or other people that why is their car out here? If it's in the RV park, you can't tell the difference between them and any other tent camper.
Can we put doors on the bathrooms with codes as well?
We can do that. We have discussed that as well, getting codes so that we can those out. If somebody, because we offer showers, people can pay for just a shower. So we could give that code and they can go in and pay the code. We just have to, keep an eye on it and make sure it's not abused. And we have to change the code once a month. Okay. But we've talked about that as well.
Yeah. I'd look and see what the cost is.
Okay. Got two more left. The next project is replacing that windows on the Taj house. So we're having some of the same issues as the park headquarter windows. We do have several, most of them are rotting. They won't stay open. We've got renters that are trying to prop them open because they want a little bit of a breeze, so it's not the safest environment. They are single pane. If we came back, we'd have double pane, some metal clad over wood that would look, match the feel and look of this building. That'd be about $20,000.
Andrea, the question is, since Tosh House is a historic building, then they would be designed to meet the historic regulations?
That's what we had discussed, yes. So that's why this price is a little higher than the price for the park headquarters windows. And we would coordinate with Anna and Historic Review, make sure we followed all the rules. And then the last project is the Girl Scout cabin ADA corrections. And this was something that was approved with the new lease in April, that we were going to do this part, and we had to have it done by November. So this is kind of a requirement at this point. And we're looking at about $10,000. As you can see in the picture, it's not ADA accessible. There's no ramp to get into the building. So they just have some wood propped up. So we're going to have to build a sidewalk ramp that goes all the way out to the curb to a handicap parking spot.
You want to get Hazlet to do that, or who?
Probably, yes. We already have a contract with
How
them.
many handicap parking spaces there?
I don't know how many would be recommended, probably one or two.
Okay.
There's one there.
One there, okay. Okay, that was all mine. If you have any questions, I can try to answer them. I also have park maintenance and rec superintendent that can help as well.
Any other questions? There's none, we'll move on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you, Andrew.
And thank you for the wonderful job you all are doing for all our parks. Appreciate it, you and your staff.
Okay, and next we have Street Department. Garrett.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Last but not least, I'd like to talk about the street department CIP breakdown. So over the next few years, we'll continue talking about some of the projects identified in the transportation impact study. We're currently working on the short-term projects, but we still have the medium-term projects, so those will be coming up in the next couple of years. Next slide. One more. First off, I'd like to touch on the annual paving program. As Clinton mentioned, we take a lot of pride in our city streets, and with the recent ice storm and then the wet weather we're having now, it's going to be vital that we maintain that program. Again, we do it all in-house. The $600,000 is for basically material costs. So again, to avoid those costly reconstruction repairs, it's vital that we continue that program. Another annual program that we'll look to maintain is the annual sidewalk program. Under that current program, we dedicate about $100,000 a year to make sidewalk improvements throughout the city based on the adopted sidewalk plan. COVID did delay a number of those projects, but we're back going full steam ahead this year with Hazlet again, primarily in the downtown area along Austin Street and San Antonio Street. So if that project is funded again, we will come before council in early October to talk about a priority list for next year.
How far do you get with $100,000?
What do you? 2 to 3 blocks. It all depends on the location, but generally 2 to 3 block stretches is a good estimate.
So, Ken, a question I had was of the 2021 sidewalk budget, did we spend all of that, or is there any? Okay,
We will.
by November it'll be.
Yes, by the end of September.
Yep.
About 2,700 feet of 5-foot wide sidewalk.
How long is a block?
About
Yeah.
2,700 feet of sidewalk.
This 100,000 doesn't include the sidewalk that we're getting ready to explain right now. It's an additional sidewalk.
So the other project, and I mentioned this at a recent council meeting, the city did get approved for grant funding for the South Llano Shared Use Bridge and Hooper Street Sidewalk Project. This will basically provide a connection between San Antonio Street going down South Llano across Barron's Creek and then east over to the recycling center along Hooper Street. So it's basically a $1.25 million project. The maximum local match is around $150,000, so a really good deal to the city. We're currently working with TxDOT on an AFA that will come before you in the next few months. So should be getting started with design anytime now.
What's an AFA, please?
Advanced funding agreement.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
That's fine. I like acronyms. I don't know. Thank
There will also be a resolution that goes with that. But I've been working on that project for a good number of years, so happy something's happening with it.
One thing I want to point out, that bridge is a standard concrete bridge. If the city wants to upgrade that bridge and make it more, what's the word, aesthetic or, yeah.
Aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah, we would have to pay for the additional cost associated with that. So keep that in mind if there's anything you want to do extra on that bridge.
Would that be typical of the bridge that you do the walk to the history from the Nimitz? You know, it has a really nice concrete, don't fall.
Yes, sir.
So that was an upgrade that the city did.
Now, isn't Ken Carr and the other hotel there, aren't they they're gonna be,
So as part of a development agreement, the adjacent hotel developer to the west has already contributed $100,000 to that project. We're also going to be talking to Ken Carr and a number of the other developments.
That was my question. Since the sidewalk's going down east on Ufer to Lincoln Street, is the property owner on the north side of Ufer participating? Because wouldn't we, in a development agreement, wouldn't we require them to put in a sidewalk?
They're not currently, but it's all about timing. But you are correct. So if they were to come in first, they would be responsible for providing sidewalk in that area. So it's all about who comes in first at this point. And so that's why we're talking to Mr. Carr.
Yeah, so if they wait, they get a free sidewalk.
Correct. So we're hoping he'll contribute to this.
Also hoping HEB will contribute, since this will provide a lot more pedestrian traffic to the HEB store.
It seemed to me that the property owners, we require other property owners to build their sidewalks, that we should require this property owner to be a part of it. Just my opinion.
I don't disagree at all. All right, any other questions about that one? Next slide, please.
I do have one question. How wide is the bridge?
10 to 12 feet.
Oh, okay, it's that big.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
A little larger than the other one going down Orange Street.
Considerably.
Thank you.
Next project I wanted to touch on is something that's currently ongoing, the design of the short-term projects that were identified in the TIS. As you may recall, those were funded as part of the mid-year budget agreement, so Kimley Horn is currently designing those. The plan is to present that package as approved by council to TxDOT as part of a partnership proposal. Again, the hope would be that TxDOT would fund the full construction costs and the city wouldn't be on the hook for any additional design costs. So just wanted to bring that up.
Garrett, a question I would have, typical, what would be, if they would agree to do that, what would be the timeline that they would actually do it? 5-10 years from now?
Well, we've talked to them about it, and we've said 12 to 24 months is what the city's preference would be.
Good.
And I think they agree under the safety funding allocation for that. That's the whole goal of those safety projects, is when there's an issue, they identify them and try to get them done as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing you might want to point out on this is not a project we can phase. We need to do all these projects at once, because if we do some of the improvements, then it'll push traffic over and create more problems at other intersections. So basically, we need to do this as one project.
So we'll be coming back to you in the next few months with updates regarding those projects.
now, if you go out 290 west, there at the Y, and you're going to that light right there, man, that pavement is just really getting bad. Does TxDOT have anything in the deal about fixing that up and smoothing it out? Because it's getting pretty rough.
They keep telling us they have a mill and overlay project for Main Street, but the most recent schedules I've seen are 2023, 2024 for that.
Boy, it's gonna be.
So one thing, we're trying to leverage some of these restriping projects that are included in the short-term projects into that, where it makes sense to do them both at the same time.
Okay.
Do a mill and overlay and restripe it. So, ongoing discussion.
Okay.
A couple of equipment purchases I'd like to touch on. As you know, we currently have 2 portable message boards. Those were instrumental in getting information out to the public during the pandemic. And we've used them for all sorts of things, including the parade this past weekend. Just having 2 of them is really not enough. You know, we like to have those out, letting people know about things, but it would also be helpful to have additional message boards to place immediately around the event. So one thing we've been discussing with various other departments is purchasing 2 more boards at a total cost of $36,400. That cost would be split between all the public works divisions as well as emergency services. So it's a pretty small impact to all the budgets, but that is being proposed in this upcoming budget.
Didn't the police, Brian, maybe you can answer that, didn't the police, y'all get a grant or something in order to purchase the signs we have now?
No,
We attempted to write a grant, but it wasn't funded.
It wasn't funded? Okay.
Yeah, we did apply for grant funding for these and we're not successful. So again, pretty small impact to the budget if you spread it out.
Well, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You know, all they can do is tell you no, but keep trying.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What'd you say?
So another equipment purchase that will be spread out between departments is a mechanical diagnostic equipment. What we're finding with our mechanics is that all this new equipment, both the light and heavy fleet, it's all computer generated codes. And a lot of times we don't have the equipment just to read the codes. So we're having to go to dealerships or equipment specialists just so they can tell us what the error is. And so we've been working with our mechanics for $19,200. They can buy the software and have that in-house where they can read the codes and then fix the equipment in-house.
You're becoming less of a mechanic and more of a technician.
That's exactly right. And then the final piece of equipment I'd like to touch on is our chip spreader. Basically, this is the piece of equipment that puts down the rock on the streets. So once you lay asphalt down, it's vital that this equipment is working. It's nearly 20 years old and it's been getting by. You know, it's served the city well, but just recently we've had some major failures where we've been down for a couple days. And so we are proposing the purchase of a new chip spreader. It'd be part of the lease purchase program, so spread out over the next 3 years.
$245? I mean, $245,000 for this?
Sure.
Okay. At least that's a lot cheaper than the dump.
That's right.
All their equipment starts at $500,000.
That's true.
Is this new or used?
It would be new.
The one we currently have, was that purchase used or new? Do you recall?
I don't know. It's a 2002, so I assume it was purchased new, but I'm not sure. That is all I had for streets. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Any other questions? There's none. Thank you, Garrett.
Thank you.
Okay, Mayor, Council, that concludes our CIP presentation for this evening. If you have any follow-up questions, we'd be happy to answer those, or if you think of anything after the fact, feel free to give us a call or send us an email and we'll get back to you.
So you want all these funded in 21-22 budget, right?
Everything that we have on our list, yes. And I'm like I said, I know it's an extensive list, but this is a starting point for the conversation that we'll have later.
So the preliminary budget that you'll receive next week includes most of these items. The only thing that we haven't found the money for that I mentioned today is the pavers. Since they're $500,000 expense, we have not included that in the preliminary budget at this point in time. So we're still trying to find the money to fund that project. But I think most everything else that was proposed for next year is included in the preliminary budget.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? If not,
Andrea, how about the playground equipment? Has anything transpired there, or is it?
So they were supposed to be here this morning to start installation, but the rain delayed them, and they said it needs to dry out, so now they're going to try to start next Monday.
Okay.
It's the newest plan. And it'll take them 3 weeks to do their part if there's no more rain delays, and then after that, the Port-in-Place Surface Company comes in, does their part, maybe another 3 weeks, again, without rain delays, maybe not even that long for that part. So we're hoping by September that we can open.
Good.
So another question, do you have anything, I guess this is not capital improvement, but do you have anything in the parks budget for the nature trail at Ladybird?
No, we don't have anything in there. Typically, the Friends of the Fredericksburg Nature Center funds all of the improvements on those trails, the pollinator garden, the bird watching area. They've done all of that. They do a really great job and just ask us for help every once in a while when they need it.
Like concrete?
Yes, something, or a bridge.
bridge over the river. Creek, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, if there's no further questions or concerns from council, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Have a motion by Bobby and a second by Jerry. Any further discussion? There is none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carried unanimously.